The Jewish way of looking at the present is not just looking at the present. We live in the past as well as looking in the future. Rav Soloveitchik writes, Judaism attempts to combine the experience of youth and age and requires of the Jew that he be simultaneously and perhaps paradoxically both young and old, like a tree whose roots absorb their nourishment from the soil and whose foliage is caressed by sunlight flowing from a distant and unknown future. The Jew must deeply be rooted in his past and inspired by a vision of the future. There are so many times in halacha, in Yadus, that we are called upon to relive, to re-experience, but also hope for the future, and also dream about the future. Every holiday, Pesach for sure, Chayav Adam Leros Es Atzmo Kilu Yatzim Mitzrayim, but also dreaming of what it will be in the future. And maybe at this time of year, there's no better topic to think about, and that is Beis HaMikdash, Yemos HaMashiach, what it was like, Zecher LaMikdash, and what it will be like, Bizman Beis HaMikdash. And there are so many topics that we could talk about as we daven, especially at this time of year, for the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, for the return of Malchus Beis David, the return of Kibbutz Golios, as described by all the Nevi'im. Maybe we'll focus on one detail. Malchus Beis David. Es semach David avdecha meheret hatzmiach v'karno tarim b'shuasecha. We daven for David HaMelech to return. Let's analyze one idea relating to Malchus Beis David, and B'schus are analyzing Malchus Beis David. Be'ez Hashem, it should be mekuyem that we should be zochet to see Malchus Beis David. So there is a question, but we'll get to the question through the Gemara in Maseches Yevamos. The Gemara in Maseches Yevamos fills in a story, as many Gemaras, many Chazals do, fills in a story that took place in the Tanakh. We remember the story of David and Goliath, where David takes a slingshot and fells Goliath, and Shaul HaMelech is looking, and he's wondering, who is that? Who is that boy who just felled the giant? Who is he? Is he Roy to be the king? Is he Roy for royalty? Says Doeg Ha'adomi. Says Doeg, the master, Baal Lashon Hara. Amarle Doeg Ha'adomi. Shaul. Ad shata mashal alav imhaganu l'malchus imlav. Before you ask whether he's Roy to be the king or not, Shaul alav imroy lavo bakal imlav. You should ask if he can marry a Jew. After all, my taima, to ka'asi me'rus ha'moaviyah. After all, you know his lineage? His lineage is Moabite. He has Moabite blood in him. Rus ha'moaviyah. Amarle Avner. But Avner says, wait a minute, Avner the general. It's not a problem. Ammoni v'lo Ammonit. Moavi v'lo Moavit. The Torah says that a Jew cannot marry someone from Ammon and Moab. That's only the males. Ammoni u Moavi. But the females are okay. So Doeg, stop complaining. Says Doeg, oh yeah, what's all illicit marriages are only the males? Mamzer v'lo mamzeres. Mitzri v'lo mitzris. And there's a give and take and back and forth until Doeg stumps everyone and they have no answer for Doeg. And there's a tension that's palpable, that's felt. Is this person who just felled the giant going to be excluded from joining Am Yisrael? Until finally, one of David's supporters gets up on a chair. Shechagar charboki yishmal va'amar kol mi she'ein shomei halacha zu yitag b'cherev. Whoever doesn't listen to me, forget it. Kabakubani, I have a Mesorah from the Bezdin of Shmuel Haramasi, Ammoni v'lo Ammonis, Moavi v'lo Moavis. This halacha, only the males, not the females. Okay. We saved David HaMelech, Ammoni v'lo Ammonis, Moavi v'lo Moavis, and David HaMelech is allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael. But let's take a step back and think about this for a minute. So we saved David, but why was there this controversy in the first place? Why does David even have this stain on his lineage? If you were writing the story of Moshiach, if you were writing the story of Malchus Beis David, wouldn't he have the most perfect, pristine, pure background? Why did David have to even come from Moavis, even though it's mutter? And if we think about it, it's not just this one event. There seems to be a pattern of murkiness in David HaMelech's lineage. If you remember the story back in Sefer Bereshis, where else did David come from? Ammon and Moab, Lod and his daughters. We know the story. They were with their father. Vatila Rabachira ben Vatikra Shema Moav Hu Avi Moav Kal Arayom Vatseira ben Ami. This is David HaMelech from Lot and his daughters. And we continue Parshas Vayeshev, Yehuda and Tamar. What exactly is going on here? What is the message of the pattern of murkiness in David HaMelech's lineage? Rus and Boaz, if you want to add one, what exactly are we supposed to feel? So again, just one note before we go into a couple of approaches. We are not here blaming or thinking or announcing that the players involved in each of these stories did anything wrong. Each of these stories require its own elaboration and focus and study. There seems to be a pattern. Each one of them might have been L'Shem Shamayim. Right, the Gemara says, and the Medrash tells us, that Lot's daughters thought they were the only ones left. Maybe it was another Dor HaMabul. There was nobody left. V'lo mispakshos l'zanos es avian, says the Medrash. Ela amru, lo barak HaKadosh Baruch Hu sa'adam ela pilya v'rivya. The world was created for Puravu. V'ariyu chariv kador HaMabul. There's nobody left. Why did God leave us alive? They felt after the stone was destroyed. They said it must be to populate the world. Of course, Tamar felt and realized she had a Ruach HaKodesh that she was supposed to have children with his family. And if it wasn't going to be with the son, it would have to be with the father. She felt that. Mi'ara Tamar berov tavasa laholid mizera kodesh. So every story, Rus and Boaz, they were acting l'shem shemayim. And we're not doubting that. But it's still peculiar and curious that in David HaMelech's background, we have this pattern of murkiness. Again, I didn't say sinfulness. Murkiness. What exactly is the message from our perspective as we analyze David HaMelech? Four ideas to take with us into our lives, into this period of time as we're starting the 3 weeks, Shavas B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av. Number one is more of a Kabbalistic idea. It's quoted from the Beis Yosef in Magid Mesharim, which is his work that he asked questions to the Malach, Rabbi Yosef Karo, and he got answers, Aramaic work on Ala Torah, among others. But I'll read it to you from the Ema Banim Smecha. The Ema Banim Smecha, on page Kuf Chav Gimel, quotes this from the Magid Mesharim. Mevuar b'Sifrei HaMekubalim. It's explained, it's clear, in the Sifrei HaMekubalim. Shebe'ez Shashem Yisbarach, Rotze La'asos Eser Davar Gadol Ba'olam. At a time when Hashem wants to do something amazing in the world. He wants to bring a matana to the world. That's going to affect the upper worlds and the lower worlds. The Hashem clothes it and garbs this great matana in many different layers and garbs. V'afilu be'emsoim she'enam noim, v'odeim keurim, even unseemly garbs. He will clothe it in. Why? Kedei shelo yargishu bazeh hadinu hamakatrikim. So that the prosecuting forces in the world, so Midas Hadin doesn't say and feel that, oh, we don't deserve it, and it's not something that the world should have. If it was done in public, take of hayolam makatri lakatre, then Midas Hadin, the Midas Hadin that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created would say, no, they don't deserve it. So very often, explains the Imam Adam Smecha, based on the Rabbi Yosef Cairo, when Hashem wants to put in an amazing matana to the world, He will clothe it, He will try to get it in under the rug, so that the Midas Hadin won't have power to protest, and the world will get what it needs and it deserves in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Many examples of this, but in this context, says the Imam Banim Smecha, Da Malach Gila Rabbeinu Beis Yosef, Hatam she'itzrach David u'Malka Mashiach. The reason that David and Melech HaMashiach had to come, Meirus HaMoaviyah, Mishum she'aydei kach islay tukva liskaf al ha'usitra, so that it could be covered. And that's why David HaMelech, the context there of the Imam Nesmecha is talking about how the birth of the state of Israel had to come through people maybe who were not so dedicated to Torah and mitzvos, but it's the same idea. When there's a matana given to the world, sometimes it has to be clothed. Kabbalistic idea, number one, from the Imam Nesmecha. But there's a second idea. A second idea that's mentioned by the Mefarshim, and we'll see one line in the Shemi Shmuel, who brings it to 4. But first, let's analyze a story in Sefer Shmuel Aleph, Perek Tezvav. We have the story of Shaul HaMelech and Amalek, which, by the way, next year, where we have a Purim Mishulash, where Purim falls out on Friday, this is the only time, answer to a trivia question, the only time that one would read the same Haftorah 2 weeks in a row. Parsha Zachar and Purim Mishulash in Yerushalayim, they will read the same Haftorah 2 weeks in a row. Okay, so what's the story? So we know Shmuel tells Shaul HaMelech to get rid of Amalek. So what does he do? He goes and he does a partial, what he's supposed to do. And then afterwards, Shmuel comes and says, how comes to meet him. And Shaul says, I did it. And Shmuel says, you did it? What are all these animals that I hear? What's this? What is that? I don't hear anything. Hakimosi es devar Hashem. Vayomer Shmuel umek kol hatzon hazeh asher ba'aznoi v'kol habakar asher anuchi shomea. Vayomer Shmuel me Amaleki yaviu. The Amalekim brought them. Say it's from the Amalekim. Asher chamal ha'am al meitav hatzon v'habakar. Vayomer Shmuel says, listen to me. Kodesh Baruch Hu is upset. Halo im katan ata be'einecha rosh shiftei Yisrael ata. Don't be small in your eyes, Shaul. Vayimshacha Hashem lemelech al Yisrael. Hashem made you the king. Vayishlacha Hashem baderech vayomer lecha v'achramta zachatan. Hashem told you what to do. V'lama lo shamata b'kol Hashem. And again, Shaul says, Asher shamati b'kol Hashem. Va'elech, I did. Va'avi esagag. Vayikach ha'am. It was the am that took from the shalom, from the spoils, v'chulu. And again, Shmuel turns to leave. Shaul rips his beged, and finally, at the end, he says, Chatasi. What's the message of this story? What does he mean, Im katon ata beinecha, if you're small in your eyes? If we focus on the words of the Perek, Shaul keeps saying, I did it, but it was the Am. I did it, but it wasn't my fault. The Am took the spoils. The Am made me do it. It wasn't me. And even the story earlier, remember the first chait that Shaul did? He was supposed to wait for a week for Shmuel to come to Gilgal and then give the karbanos. And he doesn't wait, and Shmuel comes afterwards and says, why did you wait? He says, the Am was dissipating. The Am was leaving. Vayomer Shalki Ra'isi Kinafatz Halamei. They will. What's going on here? Ki katanata. Say the Mefarshim. Shaul HaMelech was influenced by the Am. He didn't rule on the Am. And to be a successful king, Shaul might have been a tzaddik originally, but he wasn't a successful king because he didn't rule over the Am. He let the Am rule, and he was always worried about public opinion and what was going to be from the outside. And therefore he wasn't a successful king. Says the Shemi Shmuel in one line, why was David a successful king? Says the Shemi Shmuel, there's an article by Rav Chaim Yaakov Goldvicht, quoted in the Zichron Harav. Zichron Harav, Sefer put out a number of years ago, where the Shemi Shmuel says, quoting from the Kotzker, quoting from his grandfather, "De'inyan ha'malucha lo haya nimsa b'Yisrael, v'hayu tzrichan lichazos me'amon and Moav." What does that mean? Explains with Goldich, explaining the Shemi Shmuel. To be a king is not something natural for a Jew. We know the Gemara in Yevamos tells us every Jew has 3 simanim, Rachmanim, Baishanim, V'gomlei Chasadim. We're all part of one unit. We're all part of one body. Our right hand doesn't rule over our left hand. One part of our body doesn't rule. So to have a Jew rule over a fellow Jew, that's not natural. That's not something that we aspire to even. We don't daven that our children should be the king. That's not something that we daven for. But to be a successful king, one has to rule over. David needed a little Moabite blood in him. Says the Shemi Shmuel, explained by Rav Goldvicht, in order to be a successful king. He was an exception to the rule. Because we know from Psukim in Tanakh, Moab had a little geut, a little arrogance. David had to take it to make it. David was not. Ani Tolas Veloish, he was one of the most humble people. But he had to take it in a way and channel it to be a successful king. David, Haisa Nefesh David HaMelech, Temua B'Shivya B'to Klipas Moav, Kedei Lahotzi Inyan HaHisnasus Mea Klipa, Ulahavia LaKedusha Lisnasi Listara L'Shem Shamayim. And that's what Shaul was telling him. Im Katanat Avenecha, you're the king. To be a king, you have to rule over the Am. And that's the second idea, maybe why David HaMelech needed these background. Again, it doesn't explain all the stories, but at least the Moab side of it. In order to be a successful king, we recognize David HaMelech had to have this. And it's even alluded to in an unusual conversation that takes place between David and one of his wives. If we fast forward, Shmuel Beis Perek Vav. The story of David HaMelech bringing the Aron back to Yerushalayim. What an amazing day. There's a whole parade. Every few steps they stop, they bring karbanos. David's on his way back. David is dancing. Right, the Pasuk says, the Rambam quotes this at the end of Sefer Hilchos Lulav. V'David mecharker b'chol oz l'fnei Hashem. David is giving all his might. He's dancing and sweating. Imagine he comes home from after the day, comes home, and even before that, I should note, as he's dancing, the pasuk tells us, "Umichal bas Shaul nishkafa ba'ad hachalon." Michal, his wife, the daughter of Shaul, as if we don't know that already. We know that. Michal bas Shaul is looking out the window. Vateres hamelech, and she sees the king, her husband. Mifazez u'machaker l'fnei Hashem vatives lo beliba. She becomes disgusted. Why? David comes home. He falls on the couch. He's like, wow, what a day. What an amazing day. And what does Michal say? Sarcasm in Tanakh. Manichbad hayom. What a great day. When every maidservant in the kingdom saw the arms of the king of Israel dancing. He probably rolled up his sleeves and was dancing. Manichbad hayom melech Yisrael. Asher nigla hayom le'eni imoz avadav ki golos niglos echad me'arekim. And what does David answer? Very strange. I'm the king, not your father. So David says, Vayomer David al Michal, l'fnei Hashem asher bachar bi me'avicha mikol beiso, l'tzavoso si nagid. And I would have done even more, l'shem shemayim. What's going on? If you look in the Yalkut Shimoni on the Pasuk, he fills in the conversation. Michal says, my father would never have done this. He would have noted how you have to act in front of everybody. And what does David say? That's right, because he was mushpa and he always worried about what everybody else was thinking. But I do what I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do, and I don't worry about anybody else, because I'm the king. And that fits into this idea of the Shem Shmuel, this little Moabite tendency that he needed in order to be a successful king. And this also explains the Sefer Ikarim notes, based on Chazal. David HaMelech was not perfect. He was a symbol of tshuva, right? But he was not perfect. He did a number of things wrong. However you interpret David and Bathsheba, he counted the people, and yet he kept the Malchus. Shaul HaMelech, he sinned once, twice, boom, done. Loses the Malchus. What's the difference? Explains the Sefer HaYikarim. David HaMelech's sins were personal. Okay, taiva, mistakes. You don't lose the Malchus for that. Shaul HaMelech's chatoim had to do with his being the king. Had to do with his not being successful. Says the Sefer HaYikarim, Shaul chata be'umanus hamalki v'roi sheyovad ha'omnus hahu. It's appropriate. Avol David lo chata be'umnas hamalki shechatu hayachet acher she'en lo atlus be'umnas hamalki. And therefore his nitan l'machila. But this is all idea number 2 about why David HaMelech needs this background, because of this little Moabite blood that he needed to have in him. Number 2. Number 3, a short third idea, and finally the fourth idea that we'll get up to. A third idea is based on a Gemara in Maseches Yuma. The Gemara tells us, Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel, why did Shaul HaMelech's Malchus not last? Well, we would say in English, he had no skeletons in the closet. He had nothing to hide. Perfect upbringing, perfect backgrounds. There was nothing balancing him in terms of feeling up. It's always good to have something that holds you back, so that if I think of myself as too much, I could remember who I am. And that's why the Chizkuni says, one of the great Rishonim, Moshe Rabbeinu's parents were an illicit relation after the Torah was given, an aunt and a nephew. Right, Amram and Yocheved. Yocheved was the daughter of Levi. Amram was the grandson of Levi. Right, a nephew and an aunt. That's an Asur relationship. How could that produce Moshe Rabbeinu? It wasn't Asur at the time. It was before Ma'amad Har Sinai. But Moshe, as great as he was, Lefi she'ein ma'amidim parnas al hatzipor. The Chizkuni quotes this Gemara. And therefore, it should never go to Moshe Rabbeinu's head. Or we even know there's a halacha. The Ran writes in one of the drashas. The Ran says, we know there's a mitzvah for every single Jew to write a Sefer Torah and to have a Sefer Torah. Yet a king has to have a Sefer Torah, a second one with him, wherever he goes. Always to have a Sefer Torah with him. Why? What does he always need that for? Explains the Ran in the drashos in Drush HaChadasar. Because the king has elastic power. The king is very flexible in what he's allowed to do. There's a danger. There's a danger. If somebody has so much power, maybe it'll go to his head. Maybe he'll go above and beyond. Maybe he won't keep the gvulos. Always have a Sefer Torah with you. It'll help balance you out. So maybe that's why also David HaMelech, he had skeletons in the closet. He had Lod and his daughters, Yehuda and Tamar, Rus and Boaz. Every story again can be explained. But David HaMelech had that balance that he needed. So number one, first idea we had, Kabbalistic idea, to always cover up valuable things. Hashem wants to get it under the rug so that the Midas Hadin doesn't prosecute. And Malchus Beis David is one of the greatest gifts that humankind can ever have. Number two, the Shem Yishmuel, to have a little Moabite blood in him in order to be a successful king. Number three, to always have the balance, the Kupa Shel Shratzim, behind, so that he's never misguided too much. And finally, number four, the fourth and final idea. Says Rav Soloveitchik, what do all these stories have in common? Lod and his daughters, Yehuda and Tamar, Rus and Boaz, what do all those stories have in common? It was all stories where the future looked bleak. It was all stories where people, usually women in these cases, involved, they could have given up. And there's no hope. And it's done. And it's dark. Let's just give up. And in each of the stories, the protagonists said no. They said, we are going to do something. Hope beyond hope. In the darkness, we're going to push forward. And we're going to try to accomplish. And we're going to do something to try to make a difference and to push towards Geula. And that's the definition of Geula. And that's an ingredient that's needed in Malchus Beis David. The ingredient of hope in the darkness, of always thinking that there's going to be a light. Says Rav Soloveitchik, true, they did it in a horrible way, but their primitive intention was good and demonstrated a remarkable strength of spirit. That same spirit is a foundation of the kingdom of the house of David, of the eternity of Israel, the belief in tomorrow, and a kingdom of justice. And he continues, when a Jew sits on the ground on Tisha B'Av, he pours out his heart, because we know it's not just about the past. Remember, there's some famous story about Napoleon. He was once going through Yerushalayim and he sees people on the floor. What are you doing? We're crying for our temple. Oh, I didn't hear about it. I didn't hear a temple burned. Yeah, it was 1,000 years ago. You're still crying? A nation that still cries 1,000 years later is definitely going to see it's being rebuilding. Napoleon said that. Says Rav Soloveitchik, if not for the belief in the future exemplified by Lod's daughters, the idea of the house of Malchus Beis David would not have been realized. Tamar, all of them, Rus, it's hopeless, it's dark, give up. No, they don't. Everyone laughs and mocks, says Rav Soloveitchik, saying, God has long forgotten you. Thousands of years passed, and the divine promise was not fulfilled, yet the Tamars kept waiting. They stayed on the ground on Tisha B'Av and said, on this night my sons cry and wail. On this night my temple was destroyed and my talus burned. And I'm Mamim Munah Shalema, that the seed of Moshiach was also sown on this night. David HaMelech needed all of these stories in his background because it's all about individuals who symbolize what Malchus Beis David has to be about. It has to be about hope. It has to be about positivity. It has to be throughout the long gullus that we're still in, that we're diving in. We hope. We hope. We see things going on in the world today that we can't fathom. And we recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge. Over the past few months, there's never been something like this in thousands of years. We hope, we daven, that it's getting towards the end. We hope that we're almost there, that it's a darkness. We have to try to have that hope that Tamar had, that Lod's daughters had, that Rus had, and that David HaMelech had. And that is a fourth idea explaining how it is that this could be David HaMelech's lineage and his background. So to summarize, yes, David HaMelech's background is somewhat murky. but there are reasons for it. It's covered up on a Kabbalistic level so that we recognize the gift that it is. And Hashem sometimes covers up, even in unseemly clothing, gifts that he's bringing into the world from the Beis Yosef. Number two, David HaMelech, to be a successful king, there was an exception to the rule. He had to rule over his fellow Jews. He couldn't have the natural Rachmana Baishanim V'Gom Lechasadim. So he needed that a little bit, said the Shem Shmuel. And that's why he was the successful king and not Shaul. And that's why Shaul lost the Malchus and not David. Number three, to balance him out. The Kupa Shel Shratzim that he needed to make sure it didn't all go to his head. And finally, to instill hope in our having hope for David HaMelech and Malchus Beis David. We know at the end of every bracha in Shemona Esrei, in the Amidah, we have a summary of the bracha. Right? Rafeinu Hashem v'nei Rafei, ki kel rofei neman rachmanata. Or Re'eva anyenu, ki goel chazakata. We say something about Hashem, except for one. Esemach David avdecha meir tetzmiach, v'karno torim bishuasecha, ki lishuascha kivinu kol hayom. We talk about us. Why don't we talk about Hashem? Right? Every bracha ends up with a summary of what Hashem is. Atachonein. Right? Everything is about Hashem. Esemach David. It's about us. Esemach David avdecha. Tatzmiach. Please make it sprout. Ki lishuascha kivinu. Explain the Bali most of the Mefarshim. Because it's not up to Hashem. It's up to us. The more kivinu kol hayom we have, the more the lishuascha is going to come. The more the esemach David. So at this time of year especially, over the next 3 weeks, we have to dedicate ourselves to really being kivinu kol hayom, to really hoping, like Ruah said, Tamar benos Lot, to make sure that this is the last. Oh, we still have time for Moshiach, for Tisha B'Av to be a Yantif. But this should be the last time we should have a Shavasa B'Tammuz like this. This is the last time we should, be in this state, and we should be Zocha to be able to see the Binyan Beis HaMikdash with Malchus Beis David in all of its glory. B'mheir of Yameinu. Amen.